Have you ever wondered what was going on between the ears of your crush? Ever wondered where things are going with the guy you're dating? Are you dissatisfied with your love life? Are you happily attached but still want to improve things? If so, you have come to the right place. I am proud to share with you that your search is over. You are now listening to
What is he thinking?
What is he thinking?
What is he thinking?
The dating and relationship podcast for the benefit of women from the perspective of men. And now, without further ado, your host, Alexander B. Stevens.
Accountability. The fact or condition of being accountable. Responsibility. Accountable. A person, organization, or institution required or expected to justify action or decisions. Responsible. Responsibility. The state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. The state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. Blame. Assign responsibility for a fault or wrong. Fault. Responsibility for an accident or misfortune. I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that doesn't perpetrate a fraud, doesn't tell you comforting lie, or pander to you for profit, but instead tells you constructive and productive, sometimes uncomfortable truths for the benefit of your love life from the perspective of men. What's going on? This is Alexander B. Stevens, the host of your favorite podcast, What is he thinking? The podcast that tells you what's going on in between the ears of the guy that you're interested in, so you can properly respond and react, and you can get the results that you want. This is episode 1 of season 2, episode 23 overall, and I'm excited. Hopefully you're excited with me. Let's go, let's do this thing. So for season 2 of the podcast, I think I'm gonna maybe try something different. I spend a whole lot of time and effort really trying to polish up all of my season 1 podcast episodes, especially after the first couple, really trying to make them as professional as possible. And I feel like I wasn't as consistent as I should be producing content for you guys to get your edification from. And I wasn't able to give you as much information as frequently as I had intended on. So I think this year, season 2 of the podcast, I am going to be a little bit more raw, a little bit more unedited, spend a little less time trying to polish up these episodes, and a little bit more time just being myself, giving you the information and letting you digest it, think on it, and hopefully act on it. So my goal is every other week to have a new podcast for you. The episodes might be shorter, but they'll be coming at you more frequently. So we'll see how I stick to that throughout this second season, but that's the objective. Anyway, enough of that additional information. Maybe that's a little bit of TMI, but hey, I like to be honest and open with everybody I interact with and all my fans and all those listeners. So I decided to let you know what's going on through my head, and we'll see if I can make it happen. But today, season 2, episode 1. Episode number 23 overall. I want to tell you a secret. Maybe it's not a secret, but it's something that isn't often said out loud. It's kind of said in hushed tones and barber shops and certain sectors of YouTube and in private somewhere. It's not going to be on any homepage. It's not going to be widely advertised, but something that you probably should know. So come closer, okay? Come closer.
Turn up the volume. I need to tell you something. Now first, you know what the whole purpose of this podcast is, right? You know what my modus operandi is? The whole essence of every single episode I release, right?
I'm here to tell you what he is thinking. I'm here to tell you what the men in your life won't tell you. Why won't they tell you? Because most of them are trying to sleep with you. and the rest of them think of you as some type of angel, and they don't want to do anything or say anything that might be too hurtful or crude. So I'm going to tell you the real that your guy friends, your ex-boyfriend, your current boyfriend, your dad and your uncle aren't going to tell you. Now, before I get into it, I just want to say that this podcast isn't a woman bashing podcast. This isn't a podcast where we're talking down and we're criticizing. This is a podcast where we're analyzing, critiquing, and trying to help. Okay? So I don't want you to take any offense or get upset when I go into what I'm about to go into. I just want you to take it with a grain of salt if you have to. Look at it with an open mind and let's move forward with it. But let me tell you something. I have two younger sisters, and when both of them were at the age where they're about to leave high school, I sat each one of them down separately and had a similar speech. And in that speech, one of the things I told them is that they have to be their own biggest cheerleader and their own biggest critic. If you're your own biggest critic, then there's nobody that can tell you anything that'll upset you, because you'll either be like, that's a lie, or I already know that and I'm working on it. And if you are your own biggest fan, then there's no one that can blow your head up and make you overly arrogant. So I'd like to give you the same bit of advice. I need you to be your own biggest cheerleader, but also your own biggest critic when I go into the topic that I'm about to go into. So I need to make sure you're listening. Are you listening to me? Okay, I'm going to tell you one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest complaints that men have with women. And of course, I'm speaking in general because that's how this podcast is set up. Everything's general. Okay? Are you listening? Okay. The biggest, and if not the biggest, one of the biggest complaints that men have about women today is that they have zero accountability and take zero responsibility in their life. Well, in their life is a little bit too strong. Let's just narrow this down to relationships, whether it's platonic or romantic. Most men can't stand the fact that women take no or very little accountability and responsibility for anything that is non-positive that happens or transpires in their friendships, but more specifically, their romantic overtures, relationships, and dating escapades. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably sitting there like, not me. Or you're sitting there like, men too. They do it too. But this is not what this podcast or this episode is about. So get that out your head, okay? I'm speaking in general, and I'm not talking about the men. I'm talking about what the men think of you. And they think that you don't take accountability or responsibility for almost anything when it comes to your dating and romantic life. How's the saying go? Perception is reality. Well, whether you think this is true or not, perception is reality. That's how men treat you, because that's how most men feel. So what are you going to do about it? But more than what are you going to do about it, what if they're right? Not even what if they're right. Forget the fact if they're right or wrong. What if you chose to live your life as if they are right? Chose to live your life as if you don't take enough accountability for the things that happen in your love life? What if you decided to make that change, to make that adjustment? What would that mean? How would your life be different? Now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsor, Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free. Secondly, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Third, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Next, hey, you can even make money from your podcast with minimal listenership. I mean, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So this is what I want you to do.
Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
All right, now let's enter this world where you're looking at all your life situations, more particularly your relationships, and you're looking at everything that happens and doesn't happen in these relationships that you don't like. You're looking at them as your fault, okay? Side note, I personally believe everything that happens in your life that you don't like or that isn't your goal is at least partially your fault. With a very small handful of exceptions, everything that doesn't go right in your life is at least partially your fault. It might be 1% your fault, 99% somebody else's fault, but you still need to own that 1%. And the only person you can control is yourself. So your best chance at life to get the results that you want is to handle your 1%, your 20%, your 50% fault in whatever situation you're in. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's enter the world in which you're taking accountability and responsibility for everything in your life that doesn't go the way that you want it to go when it has to do with your dating and relationship life. You have a friendship that ends. Look in the mirror and say, it's my fault. Think about what you could have done differently. I could have communicated better. I could have communicated more frequently. I could have recognized her accomplishments more. I could have celebrated her more. I could have celebrated him more. There's something that you didn't do right or didn't do to a certain level that caused that friendship to end. Now, I know sometimes friendships are for a season and a reason, but at the same time, if there's any kind of dramatic, sudden end to a friendship, then I need you to think back, take accountability for what you could have done differently, and make sure you don't make that mistake in the future. Now, if you don't have a good relationship with your family, don't have a good relationship with some of the people you call friends, or if you don't have good relationships, period, they're always dramatic. They're always toxic. What's the common denominator here? The common denominator is you. So look at yourself, look in the mirror, figure out, what do I need to change? What are my shortcomings that are contributing to this? Am I overly emotional? Am I overly needy? Am I not connected enough? Am I not invested enough? Do I not communicate effectively or efficiently or respectfully? Sit back, ponder, figure out.
What is it that I can do? What is it that I can improve upon in order to improve my relationships with friends, family, and significant others?
If you're single and you don't want to be single, look in the mirror and say,
I take accountability.
It's not because all men are dogs. It's not because all men just want XXX. It's not because there are no good men out here. It's your fault, especially if you're over the age of 30 and you don't look like a bag of rocks.
Take accountability.
Why are you single?
Well, I'm going to go into depth regarding that question next episode, so stay tuned for episode 2 of season 2 of the podcast.
If you go on a bad date, is it his fault because he doesn't know how to carry a conversation? Because he's awkward? Because he's goofy? Well, hey, he might be some of those things. But how did you contribute? Did you answer with one-word answers? Or did you give complete paragraphs? Were you playing on your phone or were you engaged? Were you late or were you on time? Were you appropriately dressed or not? Did you offer to go Dutch? Or did you just expect him to pay every single time, no matter what the cost? What did you do to contribute to that date maybe not being the best? Look at yourself. Say, hey, if you went on a bad date,
I take accountability.
It's my fault. It's your fault, at least partially because of how you conducted yourself on the date, or the fact that you accepted the date in the first place and you couldn't figure out before it was date time that this isn't something that's probably going to work out. So look at things, and if they don't go right, take responsibility, take accountability, and say, it's my fault. If you have a bad breakup, is it because he's a jerk? He's an a-hole? He blindsided you? It came out of nowhere? Probably not. There probably were red flags that your friends were telling you about that you ignored. Your brother, your cousin, your dad, you ignored it. Don't ignore it in the future. You are probably toxic yourself. So the toxicity between the two of you was combustible, and that's why the breakup was bad. Well, own your part in that situation. If you have a bad breakup, it's your fault.
You need to take accountability. There is no real reason why you can spend extended periods of time romantically with an individual and have this nasty, chaotic, out of control breakup so that both individuals are scarred. You should be mature enough to have a level-headed discussion as to why what you guys have going on romantically is no longer working for you and how it would be best to part ways. You need to hold yourself accountable for nasty breakups, even if he does something super shady or cheats on you. Even if something like that happened, still take accountability, look at yourself, and try to figure out what about me made him want to cheat? What about me opened up room for another woman? Or what about me makes me want to pick guys that have low character enough to cheat? Either way, there's a way for you to look at yourself and take accountability.
What could I have done differently? Could I have picked a different guy that has a less chance of cheating? Should I stop going after 6'6" fraternity guys and pay more attention to 5'10" architects and accountants? Was I using bedroom activity as a weapon and trying to manipulate him with it and putting him on restriction and using it as a carrot and not really satisfying him in that area? So he just went to find it somewhere else? Was I playing games? Like, look at yourself. Figure out what you could have done differently to have avoided that situation spiraling out of control like it did.
In every situation, look at yourself. Say, I take accountability. It's my fault. Even if it's only 10% your fault, you take accountability for that 10%. And you try to determine what you could do differently, what you could do better, or what you could not do in the future so that you have better outcomes than you did in the recent past.
Let's say you can get in relationships and maybe they're not bad, but you can never get the guy to commit to you long term. Like you can never get the ring. Why is that? Think. First of all, say, it's my fault. Why do men not want to commit to me? Am I dating intentionally or am I just wandering aimlessly into these relationships? Am I letting it be known that I want to get married or am I just going with the flow? If he acts like he's afraid of marriage or doesn't want to marry, am I sticking with him thinking I can change him? Or do I believe him when he tells me about himself, cut things short and move on with somebody else? What am I doing? Am I girlfriend material but not wife material? Do I have the personality and the chemistry to make men want to call me their girl, but I don't have the maternal skills, the nurturing skills, domestic skills, the long-term family ideals that men require if they actually want to marry somebody? Do I not have like the morals and the mindset and the long-term life goals that a serious-minded individual would deem as optimal and something that he definitely would want to put a ring on? If that's the case, it's time to make a change. It's time to make some additions, some subtractions, some alterations with your mindset, your goals, your skill set, or with the men that you're deciding to get in relationships with. Either way, it's your fault.
Look in the mirror once again and say, I take accountability. It's my fault, or at least partially my fault. It's my fault that I keep attracting guys or I keep giving guys chances who don't want to really be in a long-term monogamous relationship. If you keep getting into arguments with people, if you're not getting what you want out of life.
Whose fault is it? Hopefully you're catching my drift and you can guess how I'm going to answer this question.
I take accountability.
It's my fault, as in it's your fault. If you're not getting out of life what you want to get out of life, especially your love life. You're in control of your life. Look at accountability as you taking control of your life.
Look at taking responsibility, taking fault. Don't look at it as a negative. Look at it as you happen to life. Life doesn't happen to you. Look at it
as you are in control of your life. What happens in your life is because of you and your actions, your decisions, the type of person you are, the type of character you have, the type of food and exercise you partake in. the type of morals, goals, standards that you have, the type of people that you choose, the environments that you decide to be in. You. It's all about you, your life, your control. It's on you.
You have the steering wheel. You're not a passenger in life. You're the driver. You're the pilot.
You're not in coach. You're in the cockpit. That's how you got to view accountability, responsibility. That's the whole point of this podcast, is I want you to take control of your love life. Take control of all the situations that you're in with men. If they're not going the way you want them to go, figure out what you can do differently and do differently. Because who's the only person that you have control over anyway? It's not society. It's not the world. It's not that guy. It's not men in general. It's you.
So since only you can control you, and you have the most influence over the direction and satisfaction of your own life, it's time to start acting like you know this fact. It's time to start thinking that way, and it's time to start behaving accordingly.
All right? Until you have done all that you can do, you have no right to point the finger, blame, or complain about anything. It's not his fault. It's not Guy's fault. It's not your parents' fault. It's not your friend's fault. It's not society's fault. It's not the church's fault. It's not the patriarchy's fault. It's not feminism's fault. It's your fault. So if you haven't learned anything else today, I want you to keep in mind this. You are the director to your own movie, which is your life. You're the writer. You're the cinematographer. You're the publisher. You're the everything. So however the movie of your life goes is because of you. So you can be passive. You can be a victim. You can point fingers. It can be everybody else's fault. Or you can take accountability. You can take responsibility. You can stand up, close your eyes, think of your love life, think of a particular situation, and say,
I take accountability. Do you know what that means, man?
It's my fault. But every movie has a plot. Every movie has a twist. Every movie has a turn. Make sure you're the hero to your movie if you want to have the happy ending that you dreamed of.
I take accountability.
I'm the reason it didn't work out. But guess what? I'm going to be the reason that it does work out. I was the reason it failed, but I'm going to become the reason why I succeed. Because I'm taking accountability. I'm taking responsibility. I'm setting myself apart from these other women that point the finger and play the victim game because society allows it. I'm going to be different. And a man's going to notice this differentness, this uniqueness, this special quality that I have. And I'm going to win in the end with men.
This is Alexander B. Stevens. You just listened to the first episode of season 2. I want you to have a great week. I want you to take solace in these words that I have spoken to you today. I want you to think on them, meditate on them, take accountability for everything in your life, especially your love life, and watch things change for the greater, change for the better, dramatically in the near future. Alexander B. out.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the podcast. Alexander B. thanks you for taking time out of your day to listen to what he has to say. Hopefully, you feel the information shared today has helped you get one step closer to understanding men and one step closer to the type of relationship you have always dreamed of. If this episode spoke to you or you indeed felt that it was helpful, please share it with your friends and followers on social media and text the link to the episode to your inner circle of friends. If you have a future topic suggestion or need any clarification about anything that was shared during this episode, feel free to email the show at whatishethinking@gmail.com or follow and DM the show on Instagram at whatishethinking_podcast. Be clear and concise with your message, and Mr. Stevens will do his best to accommodate you. Once again, we appreciate you lending us a listening ear, and we hope your tomorrow is better than your yesterday. Enjoy the rest of your week. The podcast that is here to help you win with men. Signing off. Until we speak again.